Hi there, Megan Robinson here. Welcome back to the Nightblade Epic podcast. 2 very quick announcements this week. First, Legacy Books is going to be at Emerald City Comic-Con in March. If you're able to make it, we'd love to meet you. This is our first time at Emerald City Comic-Con and we're super excited. Meeting our readers is our favorite part of our job, so if you've been thinking about getting tickets, please do. Garrett will be there, and he'll be signing any books purchased from our booth. He'll also take photos with you. Heck, if you want, he'll take photos of you. Your call. Come check us out at booth 2222. That's 2222. Second announcement, if you're enjoying the show, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes. It helps more people find the show, and that helps us out in a big way. Thank you so much to Dave, who left us our first 5-star review. Okay, now it's time for today's show. This week, you'll be hearing chapters 3 and 4 of Nightblade. When we left off, Lauren was attempting to steal food and supplies so the wizard Zane would help her escape her parents. Enjoy!
Nightblade, Chapter 3. Lauren approached her village quick and quiet, wary of meeting her parents. Many villagers had gathered in the open space to the west. There the sun as it set cast everything in a ruddy glow long into the evening, perfect for merry gatherings. Such a party would soon be afoot. Some folk readied stout tables for food, and young children tramped a wide space in the grass for dancing. But Lauren did not see her mother or father. Her heart sank. Their absence meant they would be in the house, the place she needed to go. She flitted from tree to tree like a bird, keenly aware of the passing minutes. It took longer than she wanted to reach the village's east end, where her house sat far from any other. There Lauren saw something she did not expect. 2 strangers in brown and red garb. Chet stood by them, along with Bo, another young man from the village. Chet's eyes were hooded and his brows close, but Bo spoke animatedly and gestured all around. The strangers listened patiently, only occasionally offering comment or a prompting question. The constables, thought Lauren. They had to be. It would be too great a coincidence for any other strangers to arrive today. She had to fetch her supplies and be off quickly. She did not think anyone else in the village had seen Zane, but the constables might yet find his trail leading southwest. Although... She thought hard for a moment, reached a decision, and emerged from the trees. Chet's face brightened as he saw her. "Lauren," said Bo, "these men are constables. I have never seen a constable in the village before. Have you?" "Not once." Lauren dusted her hands as though she had just come from the axe. She stuck a hand out to the men. "Well met, strangers. What brings you so far from any building made of stone?" One of the constables stood tall and thin, but muscular as any village man. The other was at least 2 hands shorter, but his chest was barrel-wide and muscle bulged beneath his clothes. Both had boiled leather pauldrons and breastplates dyed a dull red and worn over long, simple tunics of brown. The taller one stared at Lauren's outstretched hand, but his companion reached across and took her wrist in a firm grip. "Well met," he said. "I am Corin, and my dour companion is Byrne. We seek a man traveling through these lands. When last we saw him, he headed this way, and we wondered if he had come to your village." Lauren's eyes widened. "A man in a blue coat?" They all started. "You have seen him?" growled Byrne, the taller constable. "In the woods, yes," said Lauren, nodding with vigor. "As I foraged for herbs, I saw him amid the trees. He fled when he saw me, and I could not keep his pace. I soon lost sight of him." From the corner of her eye, Lauren saw Chet's face grow stony. He knew no foreign man could escape her in these woods, but he was not such a fool as to counter her before the constables. "When was this?" said Corin. "My lady, this man must be brought to his justice. Tell me, when and where did he run?" Lauren laughed, putting just the right amount of giggle into it. Oh, you are too kind, Constable. You know well I am no lady. She made a great show of thinking hard upon his question. It could not have been more than a quarter hour since I saw him. As for where, he fled that way, though his path swung wildly about. She thrust a finger to the north and east, directly away from the birch copse where Zane awaited her. Corin and Byrne traded glances. Corin gave her an earnest half-bow. You have provided our lord a great service. If indeed we should find the wizard, we will return with a purse of his gratitude. A wizard? Said Lauren, her eyes shooting wide. Truly? A purse? Said Beau. Byrne scowled at his shorter companion. My friend speaks with a looser tongue than he might. Our lord would prefer that the lot of you forget his words. Of course, said Lauren. I will say nothing, nor will the boys, lest they catch my ready hand. She stepped forwards to hold a stern fist beneath Beau's nose, and he grimaced. Chet needed no such encouragement, she knew. The constables ran off with a final hasty thank you. Beau wandered towards the dance preparations, leaving Chet to fix Lauren with a knowing look. The man outran you? His tone betrayed nothing. Lauren shrugged. Well, I did not give him full chase. How was I to know he was worth a purse? I tired of my run and gave in, for why should I continue? Chet's arms folded and his eyes eased. To further his mind down the proper path, she smiled and set a warm hand on his arm before making for the village. He did not follow, for which she was grateful. She had no desire to lie more than she must, and time grew ever shorter. Lauren! Her heart dropped to her boots. The bruises on her arm flared with pain. Her father stood there, his face twisted and mean with fury. Your logs lie idle, and your axe with them. She tried to talk, but her throat cracked like desert sand. She tried again. Constables, father, she said, gesturing vaguely. 2 constables came in search of a man. His eyes did not waver. What worth are 2 constables and their man? If they find him, will they chop your logs for you? They offered a purse. He stepped towards her. It was all Lauren could do to remain rooted. She wanted to flee, to vanish into the woods and beg Zane to take her, even without the supplies. But she stayed. She would not run. Her father got close, the way he liked, and she craned her neck to see him. I will return to the logs, father. Lauren could not keep the quaver from her words. If she could only make him let her go, she could take what she needed and slip away, never more to fear his meaty arms or rank breath. You will go to the house, he said in a growling whisper. That is twice you have tried to leave me, your job, and twice too many. You will go to the house, and I will give you a lesson. Next time your feet will stay planted, and your arms will swing. I do not need a lesson, father. His fist met her gut. Lauren's nose crashed into his shoulder as her body tried to double over in reflex. It was not his hardest blow. He would save that for the house. You are far too free with your tongue when speaking to your elders, her father hissed. To the house, now. She heard Chet's footsteps and looked up to see the boy striding towards them, his face a mask of fury. She met his eyes, pleading without words for him to turn around. He ignored her. And then Lauren heard a voice she was seldom relieved to hear, her mother shrilling in the forest air. Lauren, where is your dress, you witless child? Lauren fell a step back. Her father turned. She is still chopping for me. He thrust a meaty finger in her face. She will need to go all night at the rate her lazy hands move. And how do you think we will get her wed? Not when you never let her try her luck with a man." "The men can come to her," said her father stubbornly. "Let them watch her chop. A man needs a strong woman who can work." With her father distracted, Lauren risked another look at Chet. He had stopped his advance, but he stood with folded arms and anger clear in his features. He would not leave so long as her father stood by. "A man does, and a man knows it, but a man does a different sort of knowing when he chooses a wife." Lauren's mother strode up to her father and shoved her face into his, full of all the anger Lauren could never summon. At the same time, her sharp-nailed fingers seized Lauren's bicep, pinching into the skin. "We will never get the dowry without some boy who can afford it seeing her whirl about in a skirt. Lauren, you get in the house and get that dress on. Tear it, and I will lock you in the house for an hour with your father and blow a tree horn to cover the noise." Lauren gulped and glanced fearfully at her father. "What are you looking at him for?" her mother screeched. "Go!" Lauren remembered Zane and went. As she retreated, her parents' conversation dissolved to bitter, hate-filled argument behind her. She did not know if Chet still stood guard, but she dared not look back to see. The moment she passed through her front door, anger swelled in her gut. She should have struck back. Her father's wrath would have burned like flame, but Chet would have stepped in. Together they could have beaten her father to within an inch of his life, and mayhap beyond. And Chet would not be a kinslayer if he did. But such thoughts would not help, not when Zane waited, and nearly half the hour he promised her had passed. Lauren threw from her bed the ridiculous green gown her mother had bought. Its arms, like those of her tunic, hung long to hide bruises. She threw it to the floor, ground dirt into it with her boot heel, and spat on the pretty cloth for good measure. Then she went to gather the things she needed. First, she took her father's smelly, thick cloak of dark green. She donned her own cloak, throwing the cowl back to let her black hair spill down her back. In her parents' room sat a cupboard, and from its top cabinet Lauren took her father's travel sack. His cloak went into the sack, forming a soft lining around the interior. 2 skins of water sat near the front door. She threw them into the sack. Food she took next, salted meats and several loaves of good hard bread still fragrant from Miss Aisley's oven. Lauren thought of Miss Aisley with a pang of regret, and her thoughts turned to those in the village that she would miss. Dear, foolish Chet, of course, and old Chris, who was decent to her when she did not wish to go home. But the names she would miss far underweighed the others, those who heard and saw what her parents did to her and never raised a finger or even frowned. She would be well quit of the birchwood forest. It would not miss her. Lauren hesitated before her final acquisition. It sat tucked in an old chest atop a shelf in the kitchen. The chest held useless knickknacks in the main, but one item she might use. A long and curved dagger, its sheath made of leather cracked with age. As a young girl she had drawn it, and then she hid it away before her mother could know. The blade bore strange, twisting marks engraved in black. It was a weapon, no hunting or cooking knife, as any fool could see. The night she drew the dagger was the first night she lay on her straw pallet and imagined herself in a black cloak. It was the night she first whispered the word, Nightblade. Now, though, she feared to lift it. Could she really take it? Lauren knew little of such things, and yet she would have wagered the dagger cost more than her parents' whole house. Then again, they might never notice it had gone. Not in all her life had Lauren seen them bring it forth from the chest. Her hand closed around the dagger's hilt. She almost threw it in the sack, but at the last moment she paused. Untying her simple rope belt, she ran it through the sheath's loop. With the dagger at her waist, Lauren felt like a different person. Now, truly and forever, she was Nightblade. But she had wasted too much time. She needed only one thing more before returning to Zane. The wizard could hunt with his fire, yes, but Lauren would not let herself fall under his care. What if the wizard left her upon reaching Cabris, or died on the road? No, she must be able to forage for herself. She needed a bow, and she knew where to get one. Lauren dropped her brown cloak over the dagger and slipped out the door, making for the trees once again. Nightblade, Chapter 4. Lauren hoped to find Chet away from home, but that hope fell when she found him out back fletching an arrow with a knife and gut string. She could not hope to avoid him, but she still had her tongue, and it had served her once already. She stepped from the trees. Chet's stern face softened at the sight of her. His close-cropped hair glowed golden in the sun, and his bare arms glistened with his work. Upon past years, she had thought to take Chet for a husband, dowry or no. They would find a way to pay it, or they would run away together. But that dream had grown dimmer and dimmer as the years passed and had guttered out when his mother fell ill. Now, 2 years later, the sickness kept her as close to and as far from death as ever. Chet could never muster Lauren's dowry as a huntsman, and he would never leave his home to run away. Not then, and not now with Lauren and Zane. All these thoughts flitted in and out of her head in an instant, and then she put on the expression she knew she must wear, unconcerned and gently happy to see him. "Should you not be dressing for the dance?" "The same could be said for you. That cloak is not the dress your mother chose, I think." Lauren shrugged. "I must wash before donning it. I make for the river to bathe before making myself a fair young flower." Chet put down his arrow a little too hastily and stood. "I will come. This is dull work and does little to calm my anger." She knew Chet's temper burned bright and long, though it took ages to stoke. Lauren had often wondered what would happen if her father sparked it true, but now she would never know. Lauren cocked her head and narrowed her eyes. "I think you presume much. A woman's bathing is no time nor place for a young, fair-haired man who holds her in no bond of marriage." That had the required effect. Chet's face turned red as a berry. "I meant, I would wait behind the bank, of course." Lauren laughed lightly. "Do not fret so. Will you dance with me tonight?" "Of course. And will you, with me?" He stepped closer. "I would not have asked if I meant to cruelly refuse. But my parents might object. They require such a great dowry and may refuse to let me dance with one who cannot offer it." Chet glowered. Not even they could deny me so simple a thing as a dance. Lauren both loved and bemoaned how easily she could sway his mood. A symptom of young love, she supposed. She had long known she could, but she rarely had the need, and just now it would not do to have him too angry. "Fetch me your own dowry," Lauren said. "Weave it of dandelions and lilacs, and place it upon my head. Then I will give you your dance, and you can give me mine." He flushed again, but gentler this time. "A crown of pretty flowers for a pretty flower of a girl? This I can do, and gladly. But no dandelions and lilacs lie near the river. I am astute in my planning, then." He chuckled. "Very well. I will see you at the dance. Denying myself the sight of your dress will sweeten the pleasure of its revelation. Ready your hair for my dowry." "I will." She touched his arm as she had before. For the last time, she realized. Her fingers lingered for just a moment. He wandered off to the southeast. Lauren watched him go, catching a spring in his step that had not been there before. She kept a gentle smile in case he turned around, but inside she quailed. Chet, her only true friend in all the world. Chet, foolishly and incurably in love with her. She would miss him more than all the rest, more than the birchwood itself. As soon as he had gone, Lauren slipped in the back door of his house. His mother's room lay quiet and still. Lauren chanced to look through the door and found her asleep. That was fortunate. A sudden scream might undo everything. Lauren went to the rack on the wall and pulled down one of Chet's hunting bows. She took the one of poorest make. It would serve for rabbits and squirrels, and she needed nothing grander. Lauren strung it quickly and slung it on her back, and then stooped to a low shelf where 2 full quivers rested. She took one, but she left the other. She would not make Chet a pauper, unable to hunt. She would only take what she must. Nightblade must always have such honor, she thought. It was time to go. Lauren had what she needed, and would not have to rely on the wizard to hunt for her. Her throat grew dry. This was goodbye forever. She was leaving home to fend for herself out among the 9 lands. How could this be, when only that morning her greatest aspiration had been to find a way out of chopping logs? She made for the back door, and disaster struck. The door swung open, and Chet's father, Liam, stepped into the frame. Old and stooped, he was a genial man, but never seemed to notice Lauren's existence. That was not the case now. He froze on the spot and gawked at her, his watery eyes growing wider. He opened his mouth to cry out. Lauren had the bow in her hands. Before she could think, she leaped forwards and slammed the wood into his temple. His eyes fluttered and closed as he fell to the dirt floor, an angry red welt blooming to life on his forehead. She stifled her cry with the back of her hand and dropped to one knee. Frantically, she placed her palm on his chest and felt a strong heartbeat. Her own pulse skipped in relief. Her eyes went to the bruise on his head. Chet. He could have forgiven Lauren for fleeing the village without telling him, but he could never forgive this. Could he? It does not matter, she thought. Soon she would be in the forest, never to return. Lauren shot to her feet and ran out the door. She made it to the trees and almost kept going, but at the last moment she could not leave without a final look. So she stopped beneath the low branches of an oak and turned to her home one last time. Her eyes roved across the simple houses, the smoke from the smithy, the pile of wood outside her house, her father. Her father? He stood by the chopping block, Lauren's axe in his hand, and just as her eyes found him, he saw her. He stood dumbstruck for a moment. He took in her cloak, the sack hanging from her shoulders, the bow slung across her back. His face contorted in fury. Lauren turned and ran into the woods. As soon as the village fell out of sight, the terror in her veins turned to rage, far too late to do her any good.
This has been a production of Legacy Books, written and narrated by Garrett Robinson. The music in this podcast was created by Will Musser. Check out his incredible work at willmusser.com. That's WILLMUSSER.com. Today's letter is L. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.